Flight crew ignored black woman's complaint. Then her husband, the Air Marshal, spoke. Dr. Maya Johnson adjusted her navy blazer as she settled into seat 3A, positioning her medical journal on the first-class tray table. At 42, she carried herself with the measured composure developed through years in operating rooms where her hands remained steady, even when others wouldn't. Her natural hair was pulled back in a neat twist. Professional, her mother would have approved, though Maya had long since stopped seeking that approval. The flight attendant, a blonde woman whose name tag read Heather, moved through the first-class cabin, offering pre-departure beverages. Maya noticed how Heather's smile brightened as she addressed the white businessman across the aisle. "Good afternoon, sir. Sparkling water with lime. Just how you like it." When Heather reached Maya's row, her smile tightened, eyes barely making contact. "Drink?" The question hung there, stripped of warmth. "Sparkling water, please." "No ice," Maya responded with the practiced pleasantness she'd perfected years ago. Friendly enough to avoid being labeled difficult, reserved enough to maintain dignity. "We're busy with boarding." "I'll try to get to it," Heather replied before moving on. Maya's water never arrived. A small matter, she told herself, though the pattern was familiar enough to register in her consciousness like a low-frequency hum. She returned to her journal article on advances in pediatric neurosurgery, where her expertise was unquestioned, at least on paper. 20 minutes into the flight, Maya noticed an unusual mechanical clicking sound near her window. As a surgeon, attuned to precision, the irregular pattern concerned her. When Heather passed by, Maya raised her hand slightly. "Excuse me, there's an unusual noise coming from this area. It sounds mechanical." Heather sighed almost imperceptibly. "It's just normal flight sounds. First time flying?" The condescension landed like a paper cut, small but stinging. Maya had logged over 2 million miles throughout her career. "I'm quite familiar with normal flight sounds. This is different," Maya persisted, keeping her voice even. "It seems to be coming from behind this panel. It's probably just your anxiety," Heather said with a dismissive smile. "Try to relax. Perhaps fewer caffeine beverages would help." Maya felt heat rise to her cheeks but maintained her composure. Across the aisle, the businessman frowned. "Flight attendant, my reading light isn't working," he called out. Heather immediately pivoted, her demeanor transforming. "I'm so sorry about that, sir. Let me check that right away." Maya watched as Heather promptly addressed his minor inconvenience, even summoning another crew member to assist. The contrast was stark but unsurprising. Maya had experienced this selective attentiveness throughout her life. In stores where security followed her, but not white shoppers. In hospitals where she was mistaken for janitorial staff despite her white coat and credentials. The mechanical noise continued, growing slightly louder. Maya closed her eyes briefly, calculating her options. She could escalate her concern, potentially confirming Heather's implicit characterization of her as difficult. She could remain silent, potentially allowing a legitimate safety concern to go unaddressed. The familiar mental calculus exhausted her. A memory surfaced. Her mother's voice, steady and clear. "You'll always have to be twice as good to get half as far, but never let them make you doubt what you know." Maya pressed the call button again. The noise wasn't anxiety. It was real. And regardless of how Heather perceived her, passenger safety took precedence over comfortable silence. The button remained unanswered. 40 minutes into the flight, the pattern had solidified like concrete setting. Maya had pressed her call button 3 times. Each time, Heather had either reset it without stopping or acknowledged it with a curt, "I'll be right back," that never materialized. Meanwhile, every request from white passengers received immediate attention. Maya sipped the water. She'd eventually received, not the sparkling she'd requested, but still water with a lemon wedge floating limply on top. She recognized the game being played, having encountered countless variations throughout her career. The rules were always the same. Make requests without appearing demanding. Be firm without seeming aggressive. Express concerns without triggering defensive reactions. Be exceptional without being threatening. It was exhausting work, this constant calibration. 10 rows behind her sat Michael Johnson, Maya's husband of 15 years. Few passengers would connect the distinguished neurosurgeon. In first class with the unassuming man in 13C, his cover required such separation. As a Federal Air Marshal, Michael maintained a deliberately forgettable presence, his attention quietly scanning the cabin while appearing to read a thriller novel. He'd noticed the pattern with his wife's call button. His training had taught him to observe behavioral anomalies, and the flight attendant's selective attentiveness registered clearly. He watched Maya's subtle responses, the slight stiffening of her shoulders, the measured breathing she practiced during stressful surgeries, the way she tucked her feet under her seat rather than stretching them into the aisle as other first-class passengers did, taking up less space despite having paid for more. Maya's thoughts drifted to a patient consultation last month. The white family had looked past her to the young white resident behind her, asking when the doctor would arrive. "I'm Dr. Johnson," she had said evenly, extending her hand. "I'll be performing your daughter's surgery." Their embarrassment had quickly morphed into overcompensation, excessive praise for her articulation, surprised comments about her impressive credentials, as though these qualities were unexpected anomalies rather than the foundation of her professional existence. The mechanical clicking intensified, now accompanied by a faint whistling sound. Maya glanced out the window, noting how the noise coincided with slight adjustments in the wing flaps. Her concern deepened, not anxiety, but the evidence-based assessment of someone trained to notice when patterns deviate from normal. She watched as an elderly white woman across the aisle received a warm blanket she hadn't even requested. "You looked a bit chilly," Heather said with genuine warmth. The woman thanked her profusely. Maya pressed her call button again. This time, a different flight attendant appeared, a younger man whose name tag read, Jason. "How can I help you?" he asked, his tone professional if not warm. "There's an unusual noise coming from this section of the cabin wall," Maya explained. "It's gotten louder during the flight." Jason's expression remained neutral. "I'll pass that along to the senior crew member." He walked away, leaning to whisper something to Heather, who glanced back at Maya with thinly veiled irritation. Maya caught the exchange of looks between them, the slight eye roll from Heather. The message was clear. Her concerns weren't just being dismissed, they were being mocked. Maya turned back to her medical journal, the words blurring slightly as she calculated her next move. The noise had become impossible to ignore, a metallic grinding that vibrated through the cabin wall. 2 hours into the flight, several passengers had begun casting concerned glances toward Maya's seating area. Yet Heather maintained an air of forced nonchalance, her movements becoming more brisk, her smiles more strained whenever she passed row 3. Maya had stopped pressing the call button. Instead, she methodically documented the noise pattern in the margins of her journal. Onset time, changes in frequency, correlation with turbulence. Her surgical training had instilled in her the importance of objective observation, especially when subjective reports were dismissed. When light turbulence caused the grinding sound to spike sharply, Maya decided direct action was necessary. She unbuckled her seatbelt during a smooth patch and approached the galley where Heather was arranging beverage cups. "Excuse me?" Maya began, maintaining a professional tone. "The noise I've been reporting has intensified. Several passengers seem concerned. Could you please ask the captain to have someone check it?" Heather's smile evaporated. "Ma'am, you need to return to your seat immediately." "I understand, but this could be a safety issue," Maya persisted. "I've been trying to report it for—" "You're interfering with my duties," Heather interrupted, voice rising just enough to draw attention. "If you continue to disrupt this flight, I'll have security meet us upon landing." The threat hung in the air between them. Maya felt the familiar tightening in her chest, the tension between self-advocacy and self-preservation that had followed her since childhood. A middle-aged white woman nearby interjected. "I'm sure she's just trying to help, flight attendant." "Thank you, but I've got this under control," Heather responded with a warmth completely absent from her interaction with Maya. "Some passengers get nervous during flight and misinterpret normal sounds. The implication was clear. Maya's concerns weren't legitimate but manifestations of feminine hysteria, a stereotype doubly loaded when applied to black women. Despite years of experiencing such microaggressions, the sting remained sharp. "I'm not nervous," Maya stated firmly. "I'm reporting a specific mechanical anomaly that's worsened throughout the flight." "Ma'am, return to your seat now," Heather said, voice hardening, "or I'll need to report you as an uncooperative passenger." The cabin had grown quiet, other passengers watching the exchange with uncomfortable expressions. No one else spoke up. Maya felt the weight of dozens of eyes on her skin. The silent judgment, the collective willingness to assume authority was right and she was wrong. As she returned to her seat, Maya noticed the businessman who had received such attentive service earlier watching her. He quickly averted his gaze when their eyes met, unwilling to show either support or criticism. His neutrality was its own kind of statement. The grinding noise punctuated the tense silence. From his seat in the main cabin, Michael observed the interaction, his jaw tightening imperceptibly. Maya didn't know he had witnessed the exchange, but he had read every nuance. The set of her shoulders as she walked back to her seat, the practiced dignity in her posture, the careful control of her expressions. Maya stared out the window at the vast emptiness of clouds below. The irony wasn't lost on her, that in this enclosed metal tube hurling through the sky, where human cooperation was most essential, she could feel so profoundly alone with her concerns. Some walls weren't made of aluminum and fiberglass. Michael Johnson had maintained his cover through countless flights. His effectiveness as an air marshal depended on invisibility being forgettable, unremarkable, just another passenger. In 15 years of service, he had broken cover only twice, both times for imminent security threats. Now, watching his wife being treated as if her humanity was optional, he faced a different kind of threat assessment. The mechanical noise had become audible even from his row. Maya's concerns were being systematically dismissed in a pattern he recognized all too well, having witnessed it throughout their marriage. In restaurants where servers addressed only him, in hospitals where colleagues questioned her diagnoses, but not those of white doctors. When Heather passed his row, Michael pressed his call button. "Yes, sir?" Her customer service smile appeared instantly. "I'd like to speak with the lead flight attendant privately, please," Michael said, his voice quiet but carrying the unmistakable tone of authority he typically reserved for operations. "I'm the purser on this flight. Is there a problem?" Heather's smile remained fixed. "There is," Michael replied simply. "I'd prefer to discuss it away from other passengers." In the galley, Michael produced his credentials with subtle efficiency, shielding them from curious eyes. "Federal Air Marshal Johnson. The passenger in 3A has reported a mechanical anomaly that warrants immediate inspection." Heather's complexion paled. "I didn't realize that she was married to an air marshal, or that her concerns were valid." Michael's questions carried no inflection, yet landed with precision. "We get nervous passengers all the time," Heather began defensively. "Dr. Johnson has logged over 2 million miles in her career," Michael stated flatly. "She's not a nervous passenger. She's a concerned observer reporting a potential safety issue, an issue you've repeatedly dismissed." The aircraft suddenly shuddered, the grinding noise briefly intensifying. "I'll speak to the captain immediately," Heather said, professional demeanor snapping back into place. "Thank you," Michael replied. "And one more thing, Dr. Johnson doesn't know I'm on this flight. I'd like to keep it that way for now." Returning to his seat, Michael watched the sudden transformation in crew response. The captain announced they would be checking a reported anomaly as a precautionary measure. A flight engineer emerged from the cockpit, inspecting the area Maya had identified. Maya observed this flurry of activity with a mixture of vindication and frustration. Something had changed, but not because her concerns had suddenly become valid, only because someone with authority had validated them. The noise itself hadn't changed. The perception of the reporter had. The flight engineer spent several minutes examining the panel near Maya's seat. "You were right to report this, ma'am," he said quietly. There's a loose component that could have caused problems during landing. Thank you for your persistence. Maya nodded, the simple acknowledgement both satisfying and inadequate after the preceding dismissal. She noticed Heather hovering at the periphery, her demeanor completely transformed. "Dr. Johnson, can I get you anything?" Heather asked, her voice pitched higher than before. "Perhaps some warm nuts or a cheese plate?" "No, thank you," Maya replied evenly, neither hostile nor friendly. As Heather retreated, Maya gazed out the window again, processing what had transpired. Something had prompted this dramatic shift in treatment. Her instinct told her Michael was somehow involved, though she hadn't seen him bored. The grinding noise had stopped, but the familiar weight of being respected only when validated by external authority remained, heavy, persistent, exhausting in its predictability. After landing, the passengers were asked to remain seated temporarily. The captain's voice came over the intercom. "Thanks to a vigilant passenger who reported an unusual sound, our team identified a mechanical issue that required attention. Your safety is our priority, and we appreciate your patience." Maya felt, eyes turning toward her, some curious, others reassessing. She maintained her focus on gathering her belongings, neither seeking validation nor avoiding acknowledgement. As first-class passengers finally disembarked, Heather stood near the exit, her customer service smile firmly in place. "Thank you for flying with us, Dr. Johnson," she said, the title suddenly present where it hadn't been before. Maya nodded and continued down the jetway, where Michael waited, no longer maintaining his cover now that the flight had concluded. "Fancy meeting you here?" she said, the familiarity of his presence a relief after the tension of the flight. He embraced her briefly. "Had a feeling you might be on this flight to the conference." The subtle communication between them, developed over 15 years of marriage, conveyed that they would discuss what happened once they were alone. In the privacy of the airport lounge, Maya finally released the controlled composure she'd maintained for hours. "You revealed yourself," she stated. Not a question, but an observation. Michael nodded. "When it became clear your legitimate safety concern was being systematically ignored, I made a judgment call, and suddenly my concerns became valid." Maya said, a familiar bitterness edging her voice. "Not because I'm a literal brain surgeon capable of assessing situations critically, but because my husband carries a badge." "It shouldn't have taken that," Michael acknowledged. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the pattern settling between them. How often Maya's authority required validation while Michael's was assumed. How differently they navigated. The same world despite sharing a home, a life, a last name. The flight engineer confirmed it was a loose panel that could have complicated landing. Michael finally said, "You potentially prevented an incident." Maya sipped her tea, processing this information. "You know what disturbs me most? Not that she dismissed me. I've experienced that before. It's how quickly everything flipped once she realized I had proximity to authority." She set her cup down carefully. "My humanity should have been enough." "It should have been." Michael agreed quietly. "I keep thinking about that young woman, the trainee who apologized to me as we were deplaning," Maya said. "The one who said she'd never seen anything like that interior panel issue before. What about her? She was the only other black person on the flight crew. She saw everything, how I was treated, how quickly it changed, how nobody except you stepped in." Maya leaned forward. "She's just starting out. What message did today send her about what to expect, about what's acceptable?" Michael reached for her hand. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking it's not enough just to file a complaint. That will be buried in bureaucracy," Maya replied, resolution forming in her voice. "I'm thinking about requesting a meeting with their training department. Not to get Heather fired, but to use this as a case study in their bias training. To make sure that young woman knows someone fought for a space where she'll be treated with dignity." "That sounds like the Dr. Johnson I married," Michael said, genuine admiration in his smile. 3 weeks later, Maya stood before a conference room of airline executives and training personnel. Her presentation slides displayed data on passenger complaint resolution patterns correlated with passenger demographics. When we examine the statistics, she explained, her voice steady and authoritative, we see that complaints from passengers of color are 68% less likely to receive immediate resolution compared to identical complaints from white passengers. These aren't just numbers. They represent real people whose safety concerns and basic dignity are being systematically devalued. The airline's diversity officer, a black woman named Tasha Williams, who had connected with Maya after receiving her detailed incident report, nodded in agreement. She had championed bringing Maya in to speak rather than settling the matter quietly, as the corporate legal team had initially suggested. Dr. Johnson isn't here to shame our organization, Tasha clarified to the assembled group. She's offering us an opportunity to address a blind spot in our training and culture, one that not only affects our passengers but our crew members as well. In the back of the room sat Janelle Morris, the flight attendant trainee who had witnessed Maya's experience. She had reached out to Maya through Tasha, expressing how the incident had nearly caused her to quit the training program. I didn't want to work somewhere where I might be treated the way you were, Janelle had confessed during their coffee meeting the previous week. But then I saw how you handled it, with such dignity, and how you're actually trying to change things instead of just being angry. It made me want to stay and be part of that change. Now, as Maya concluded her presentation, she made eye contact with Janelle. Creating equitable service isn't just about avoiding complaints or legal issues, Maya said. It's about recognizing the full humanity in every passenger, regardless of their appearance or title. It's about building a culture where safety concerns aren't filtered through biases before being deemed worthy of attention. Later, as Maya gathered her materials, the airline's operations director approached her. We've implemented the panel inspection. Protocols you suggested, he said. Your technical insights were as valuable as your perspective on our service disparities. Maya nodded, appreciating the acknowledgement of her expertise separate from the discrimination issue. I hope both sets of recommendations prove useful. Outside the building, Michael waited, having taken a rare day off to support her. How did it go? He asked. They listened, Maya replied. Really listened. Whether that translates to change remains to be seen, but it's a start. As they walked toward the car, Janelle emerged from the building, calling Maya's name. Dr. Johnson. They've asked me to join the new Inclusion Advisory Committee they're forming. I'd be representing the trainee perspective. Maya smiled genuinely. That's wonderful news, Janelle. Your voice will be essential in that room. Watching Janelle return to the building, Maya felt a familiar mixture of hope and wariness. The realistic optimism that had carried her through medical school, through surgeries others deemed impossible, through countless spaces where her presence itself was revolutionary. Small victories, Michael observed, reading her expression. Small victories, Maya agreed. Accumulated over time, they become something more.